So now we've seen the basics of the grid system, I want to use it again to start our web page design for the ebook that I showed you at the start of this series. So our web page is going to have several different sections in it, and I've marked those out as comments, as you can see here, so we can keep track of where we're putting all our code. So to begin with, we'll be working on the intro section at the top of the page, just under the nav bar, which we've not created yet. So this section is going to include some text on the left and an image on the right. So we're going to use a grid to space those two things out in a row. Now to begin with, I'm going to start every section, every different part of this website inside a section tag, and I'm going to give each section an ID, and that's so that later when we work on the nav bar, we can scroll to those different sections using that ID inside an anchor tag. So this one is going to be intro, and also I've created this little style inside the head where we're styling each of the sections, because by default Bootstrap is not going to style those for us. I'm just giving each one a bit of padding to the top and the bottom. Now I could use classes if I wanted to, but I wanted a specific 60 pixel value here instead. Okay, so now we can get to work on the grid inside here. So first of all, remember, every grid goes into a container. So let's create that container, div.container, and then this is going to contain the large breakpoint. So remember, that means it's going to be 100% in width until it reaches the large breakpoint, at which point it's going to go into that central column kind of structure. All right, so inside the container, we need a row. So we'll say div.row. Also, I'm going to give this some other classes. I'm going to say justify content center. We'll come back to another class later on, to be honest. For now, I want to create the columns. So we're going to have two columns. On the left, we're going to have a column of text to say what this is. And on the right, we're going to have an image. So we'll say div and then .col and md-5. And that means, first of all, it's going to be 12 columns in width for extra small size screens. And then when it reaches the medium size screen getting bigger, at that point, we're going to have 5 columns of width for this element. Now, also inside this, I want to align the text to the center. So text-center, we've seen this one before. And also for small, or rather for medium size screens and up, we want to move that text to the left again. So I'm going to say text-md- and then start. So let me explain this again. For small size screens, the default is going to be in the center of this column of the text. Then as the screen gets larger, when it reaches the medium breakpoint, it's going to go to the left. All right. So we'll see that in action in a second. Inside it, I want an H1, and inside that H1, 2 divs. So a div, and then I'm going to use the class display-2 to style this text, and that's going to say black-belt. Underneath that, I'm going to do another div, and that's going to be display-5, so slightly smaller text, and that will say your coding skills, like so. I'm also going to apply text-muted to this to make it more of a grey colour. So this will be darkish, and this will be quite light grey. All right then, so let me save this for now, just to preview this over here in the screen. So we can see that it's taken up this section on the left. If I inspect this right here, then I notice that I've not spelt col correctly. So let me do that and save it again. And okay, so now we can see that it's 5 columns in width, this div right here. Now, I also want to add in another column, but before we do that, in fact, let's add some extra text underneath the heading. So a P with a class of lead. And also I'm going to say my-4 to give this some margin up and down. And again, text-muted. All right, so I'm just going to say lorem 8 for some text right here. And then underneath that paragraph, I'm going to do an anchor tag. This is going to go to the pricing section later. So we'll do the href to be #pricing. And then inside that anchor tag, I'm going to say buy now, like so. Now I want to give this some classes as well to style it like a button. So remember, we do the button base class. Then I'm going to say button-secondary to give it that grey background color, and button-large to make it a bit bigger. All right, so if I save this again and preview, this is what it looks like. Okay, so now let's do the content on the right. And by the way, this is sitting in the middle of the screen at the minute because we said justify content center, and that justifies all the columns to be in the center, remember. Okay, so let me now come down here and do another div. And this div is going to have a class of col-md-5 again, which means 12 columns on extra small screens. When it reaches the medium breakpoint, it's going to be 5 columns in width. Also, we're going to say text-center to centralize the image. It works on images as well. Okay, so then inside here we want an image. So let's do the image tag. And the source is going to be from the assets, and we want the ebook cover. Oops, there's nothing in there at the minute. I thought I put them in. Obviously not, so let me try dragging those in. Drag them over there. Okay, so we want the ebook cover, which is this image right here. So the source is going to be /assets, then /ebook-cover.png. All right then, so the alt will just say ebook cover. Now, if I preview this, check it out. The image is huge, right? And as we make the browser smaller, then it doesn't get any smaller. So basically, it's coming out of the constraints of the column it's in. Now, in order to make this a fluid image, a responsive image, all we have to do is give this a class. So I'm going to say class is equal to fluid-image. And then what that is going to do, oops, it's not fluid image, sorry, it's image-fluid. And what that's going to do is make it 100% width of the parent element. So this thing right here. So it's going to take up all of those 5 columns in width. All right. So this is looking pretty good, right? But notice this, when we get to really small screens, it just doesn't look right on smaller screens. So what I want to do is display this as none for slightly smaller screens. And then when we get to medium-sized screens and up, then we can display it as block. So to do that, we can say d-none. So that means it displays none by default on smaller screens. Then I'm going to say d-md-block. And that means display as block when we get to medium-sized screens and up. So now for smaller screens, it shouldn't show on the page. And for large ones, it does, like that. Pretty good, right? And also notice the text. We said over here, text center, which is the case for smaller screens. All the text is in the center, right? Then when it gets to the medium-sized breakpoint, it goes to the start, which is the left. So let's see that in action. Yep, it goes over to the left now. It's left aligned. All right, cool. So there's one more thing I want to do. I want to bring this content down a bit into the middle. And the way we can do that is by coming to the row, which is right here, and using an align class. So I can say align items and then center. And what that does is